A steel door closes with a final echo. On the other side, a man sits alone in a concrete room the size of a small bathroom. The walls are bare, the light is always on, and the hours move slowly. In this place, days are measured not by clocks, but by legal deadlines and court decisions. This is Texas death row at the Allan B. Polunsky Unit. What does daily life really look like inside one of the most restrictive death row facilities in the United States? And how does long-term isolation shape the people who live here? This documentary explores the daily life, rules, and realities inside Texas death row at the Allan B. Polunsky Unit in Livingston, Texas. We will look at how the unit operates, what daily routines are like, how the system developed, and how life here affects the people inside it. Everything in this program is based on real, verified events, official policies, legal records, and reputable reporting. The goal is to inform and provide historical understanding. This is not to glorify crime or focus on graphic details, but to examine a prison system, the people within it, and the consequences of the choices societies make. We begin with where Texas death row is housed today and how it came to be here. This documentary is for educational and informational purposes only. All content is based on factual, research-driven information from public records, official documents, court filings, and reporting by reputable media and human rights organizations. No information is intentionally fabricated or exaggerated. Before we proceed, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. The Allan B. Polunsky Unit sits outside the small East Texas community of Livingston. Since 1999, it has housed all male prisoners sentenced to death in the state of Texas. Executions themselves do not occur here. Those are carried out at the Huntsville Unit, also called the Walls Unit. Polunsky is where people wait, often for years, through appeals and legal processes. Texas did not always hold death row prisoners at Polunsky. Before 1999, death row was located at the Ellis Unit near Huntsville. There, conditions were different. Some prisoners held jobs inside the prison, had limited group recreation, and lived under a different custody structure. In the late 1990s, security concerns and high-profile incidents led state officials to rethink the entire system. The result was a move to a new, more restrictive facility built to enforce near-total separation. Polunsky was designed with control in mind. Death row prisoners are housed in single-person cells, typically around 60 square feet. They do not share living space. There are no group meals and no group recreation periods. Meals are passed through a small slot in the door. Time outside the cell is limited and highly structured, often including individual recreation in enclosed areas rather than open yards. Daily routines are quiet and repetitive. A typical day includes counts by officers, meals brought to the cell, short individual recreation periods, showers on a set schedule, and very limited movement under restraints whenever a prisoner leaves the cell. Visitation is non-contact, separated by glass. There are no jobs for death row prisoners and very limited programming compared to the general prison population. Televisions are not provided to individuals on Texas death row. Personal radios and reading materials are tightly regulated through commissary and mail rules. The design of this environment has psychological effects. Long-term isolation reduces everyday social contact. Communication occurs through doors, mail, and brief visits. Researchers and legal observers have noted patterns common in high-security solitary housing: disrupted sleep, heightened stress, difficulty concentrating, and emotional withdrawal. Not everyone responds the same way. Some cope through routine, reading, religion, or legal work, but the conditions themselves are built around separation and control, not rehabilitation. For the prison system, the logic is security and predictability. Strict routine reduces the chance of escape attempts, fights, and contraband movement. Every movement is planned. Every door is controlled. Yet these same controls can also limit mental health care access, social connection, and normal human interaction. Staff working here also operate under constant security rules, and their daily work involves enforcing policies that are designed to minimize risk above all else. Life on Texas death row is not fast. Appeals can take many years. Some prisoners have their sentences changed by courts. Others wait through execution dates that are postponed and rescheduled. Time becomes uncertain. Days can feel the same, but outcomes are very different. As the 1999 transfer to Polunsky reshaped death row in Texas, one question remained open. What would it mean for the people living under a system built almost entirely around isolation? Inside the Allan B. Polunsky Unit, routine is central. Every movement is scheduled, every activity monitored. Days begin early with head counts. Officers check each cell visually and document presence. Meals arrive on trays passed through the door slot. There are no communal dining halls for death row. Food is eaten alone, in silence or with distant conversation through steel and concrete. Recreation is usually offered several times per week, but it is individual, not group-based. Prisoners are escorted in restraints to small, separate enclosures or indoor areas where they can walk, exercise, or simply stand in a space larger than their cell. Showers follow a schedule as well, also taken alone and under supervision. Anytime a prisoner leaves the cell, even for medical visits or interviews, restraints and multiple staff are involved. The system prioritizes controlled movement over flexibility. Communication with the outside world is limited. Visits are non-contact and take place through glass using a phone handset. Letters are monitored under prison mail rules, and all communication must follow policy. Some prisoners spend large parts of the day reading books obtained through the law library or from approved sources. Others focus on legal paperwork as their cases move through the courts. Radios, purchased through commissary, are one of the few ways to access news or entertainment. There is no work assignment on Texas death row. Unlike many other parts of the prison system, there are no jobs or educational programs built around reintegration because the sentence itself is different. Time becomes the main element people must manage. Many develop strict personal routines, exercise at certain hours, reading schedules, or writing habits, to create structure in a place where days otherwise blend together. Medical and mental health services exist, but function inside tight security rules. Appointments take place in secure settings, and movement to and from those appointments is controlled. Long-term isolation can make mental health care both more necessary and harder to deliver. Staff members work within policy frameworks that balance treatment needs with security restrictions, often under limited resources. This tension shapes the lived experience of both prisoners and employees. Life here is also defined by the court system. Appeals, hearings, and legal filings move slowly. Some people will spend decades at Polunsky as cases are reviewed, overturned, or upheld. Execution dates may be scheduled and then delayed through legal action. Others may have sentences changed through court decisions. The uncertainty of outcome, combined with the certainty of isolation, creates a unique psychological environment. Through all of this, the rules rarely change. The routine remains firm even as individual cases move forward or backward through the legal system. For many inside Polunsky, the central question is simple but powerful. How do you hold onto identity, thought, and mental stability inside a system built around near-total separation? For everyone housed on Texas death row, the legal system shapes the rhythm of life as much as the prison schedule does. After sentencing, cases move through automatic appeals, state reviews, federal courts, and sometimes the United States Supreme Court. Each step takes months or years. The outcome can change a person's future, but the process is slow and often uncertain. Inside the Allan B. Polunsky Unit, legal papers become central objects. Many spend long hours reading court decisions, writing motions, or communicating with lawyers through monitored mail and scheduled legal visits. Court rulings can bring temporary relief or devastating finality. A single envelope can carry news that changes the direction of a life. During this time, people remain at Polunsky. Executions do not take place here. When a date is set and legal appeals are exhausted, the person is transferred to the Huntsville unit. This transport is heavily controlled and supervised. From a human perspective, This move represents the end of waiting. For staff, it is part of policy and assigned duty. For others on death row who remain behind, it is a reminder of what the sentence ultimately means. Outside the prison, families feel the effects of distance and separation. Livingston is not close to every Texas city, and travel for visits can be long and expensive. Non-contact visits mean people see loved ones through glass, without physical touch. Families of victims also live with long legal timelines and repeated court hearings. The system impacts many lives, not only the people inside the prison. Policies at Polunsky and across Texas have been debated in courts and in public forums. Lawsuits and reports have raised questions about long-term solitary confinement, mental health treatment, and the balance between security and human rights. State officials emphasize safety, order, and the seriousness of capital punishment. Advocates raise concerns about psychological harm from years of isolation and the limited access to programs or social interaction. These discussions continue in legislatures, courts, and academic research. The staff who work inside Polunsky operate in an environment of constant vigilance. Their jobs involve enforcing strict rules every day, often over many years. This work carries stress as well. Maintaining security, managing high-custody housing, and interacting with people under extreme legal pressure. The institution is not only a place where prisoners live, it is also a workplace with its own culture, risks, and expectations. In this system, time has two meanings. On a daily level, it moves slowly, measured by counts, meals, and recreation periods. On a legal level, it stretches over decades, measured by appeals and court decisions. Somewhere between those two versions of time, people must find ways to cope, to think, and simply to get through each day. As debates over policy and psychology continue, one central question remains unresolved. How should a modern society manage the most severe punishment allows, and what is life under that punishment do to the human mind? Daily life inside the Allan B. Polunsky Unit is shaped as much by psychology as by security. Extended confinement in single cells, limited social contact, and a highly controlled routine create conditions that researchers often describe as prolonged isolation. While individual reactions differ, certain patterns have been widely documented in studies of high-security housing units. People in long-term isolation may experience sleep disruption, difficulty concentrating, increased anxiety, or a sense of emotional numbness. Some report feeling detached from the passage of time. Others describe becoming more inwardly focused, relying on memory, imagination, religion, or written communication to stay mentally active. None of these responses are unique to Polunsky. They're common across restrictive housing environments around the world. Texas Death Row does not include group programs or work assignments. Without a shared daily purpose, many create their own routines as a way to stay mentally stable. Exercise inside the cell, reading legal or religious material, or writing letters becomes a kind of structure. For some, routine serves as a protective strategy, offering predictability in a place where the future is uncertain. Mental health services exist within the constraints of a high-security facility. Evaluations, treatment plans, and crisis responses must operate alongside strict custody rules. This balance is complex. Staff must consider safety, resources, and legal requirements while also responding to the psychological needs that arise in an environment designed around separation. The result is an ongoing tension between security management and therapeutic care. The environment also influences social identity. In general population prisons, people may have roles as workers, students, or participants in programs. On death row, identity is often defined primarily by legal status. This can narrow how people see themselves and how others see them. Over long periods, limited interaction and restricted activities can contribute to feelings of isolation not only physically, but socially and personally. Researchers and courts have taken growing interest in the effects of solitary confinement and death row conditions. Some legal cases have questioned whether extreme isolation over decades can itself be harmful. Others have focused on how mental illness and capital punishment intersect. These questions do not have simple answers and are the subject of continuing legal and ethical debate in the United States and internationally. Yet, even within this environment, people adapt in different ways. Some maintain strong family relationships through mail and visits. Some turn to faith, education through reading, or legal advocacy related to their own cases. Others struggle more severely. The same conditions can produce very different psychological outcomes depending on personality, history, and available support. Inside Polunsky, the system continues to function every day. Doors open and close. Meals are passed. Legal notices arrive in the mail. And behind each door, a person is coping with the reality of isolation, uncertainty, and time. As the years pass and appeals move forward, one question grows larger. What are the long-term consequences for individuals, families, staff, and society of maintaining a system built on extended solitary housing for those sentenced to death? The Allan B. Polunsky Unit operates within one of the largest prison systems in the United States, the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Policies on death row housing, visitation, recreation, and security are shaped by state law, court rulings, and administrative decisions. Each rule has a purpose on paper, usually safety, order, or protection of staff and prisoners, but those same rules also define daily human experience. Texas maintains one of the largest death row populations in the country. Oversight comes from multiple levels: internal prison administration, state inspectors, the courts, and outside observers such as journalists and academic researchers. Over the years, reports have documented consistent features of the Polunsky environment: single cells, non-contact visits, controlled movement, and the absence of jobs or group programs for those sentenced to death. Reform efforts have been discussed periodically. Advocates argue for increased out-of-cell time, greater access to programming, and limits on long-term solitary confinement. They point to psychological research suggesting that decades of isolation can worsen mental health and make humane management more difficult. State leaders and corrections officials, meanwhile, emphasize the unique security risks that come with managing people under death sentences and the need to prevent incidents that could harm staff or other prisoners. Court decisions have influenced parts of the system, especially in areas like access to legal resources, religious accommodations during executions, and standards of mental health evaluation. However, the core structure of death row life at Polunsky has remained largely consistent since the late 1990s. High control, limited movement, and separation from the general population. Another key feature is the separation between Polunsky and the Huntsville unit. When all appeals are exhausted and a final date is scheduled, the individual is transferred from death row in Livingston to Huntsville. This physical move from a long-term environment of waiting to the facility where executions are carried out marks the final stage of the system. It represents a transition from years of uncertainty to a scheduled outcome determined through the courts, reflecting the deliberate and formal nature of capital punishment in Texas. The broader public remains divided about the death penalty itself. Some see it as a matter of justice and accountability. Others raise concerns about wrongful convictions, unequal application, and the psychological impact of long-term death row confinement. These debates appear in legislatures, academic research, and public discussions, and they shape how future policies may evolve. What is clear is that the Polunsky Unit is not an abstract idea. It is a real place where public policy becomes daily routine. Rules written in legal language become lived experience behind locked doors. The choices made by lawmakers, courts, and administrators create the environment in which both staff and prisoners spend years of their lives. As discussions about reform, responsibility, and human impact continue, one issue remains unresolved: how much the system should change in response to what we now know about long-term isolation, mental health, and the weight of capital punishment. The story of the Allan B. Polunsky Unit is not only about those incarcerated there. It is also about the people who work inside its walls every day. Correctional officers, medical staff, chaplains, maintenance workers, and administrators operate in an environment shaped by rigid policy and constant security awareness. For officers, the work is structured around procedures. Counts, escorts, cell checks, meal delivery, recreation runs, and property inventories must follow precise rules. Training emphasizes control of movement, communication protocols, and awareness of risk. On Texas death row, nearly every task is performed under heightened security compared to the general prison population. This workplace can be psychologically demanding. Officers and staff encounter individuals living under extreme legal pressure and prolonged isolation. They must maintain professional distance while carrying out duties that directly affect daily life, from delivering mail to enforcing disciplinary rules. Over time, the routine nature of high-security work can lead to stress, fatigue, or emotional strain, topics increasingly acknowledged in research on correctional workforces. At the same time, staff members are part of their local communities. Many live in or around Livingston, where the prison is a major employer. Their experiences reflect the broader reality that criminal justice systems shape the lives of workers as well as prisoners. Policy decisions made at the state level become everyday tasks for the people in uniform who carry them out. Training and supervision aim to minimize conflict and ensure consistent application of rules. Documentation is constant. Any movement, incident, or disciplinary action must be recorded, reviewed, and sometimes investigated. This record-keeping creates a paper trail that reflects how the institution operates on a daily basis. Interaction between staff and prisoners at Polunsky is limited and structured. Conversations often center on instructions, safety checks, or procedural matters. Non-contact policies mean that even visits are separated by barriers and supervision. The environment leaves little space for informal human interaction, which affects everyone inside, not only those living in cells. Despite the focus on security, moments of routine humanity still occur. Small conversations through cell doors, brief exchanges during mail delivery, or simple recognition of familiar faces seen over years. These are not policy-driven events, but they illustrate that prisons are social environments, even when built around separation. The experience of staff raises its own questions for society. How does long-term work in high-security environments affect those employed there? What resources do they need to stay healthy, fair, and effective? And how does the culture of a prison unit shape the behavior and outlook of the people who operate it every day? As we look deeper into the systems surrounding Texas death row, one more dimension comes into focus: the broader psychological and institutional impact that extends beyond the prison walls themselves. The effects of the Allan B. Polunsky Unit extend far beyond the perimeter fence. Every person on Texas death row is connected to families, communities, and court systems that continue to live with the consequences of serious crime. These impacts are long-term and complex. Families of incarcerated individuals often experience financial strain, social stigma, and emotional stress. Non-contact visits mean years of communication without physical touch. Travel to Livingston can require time off work, childcare planning, and long distances by car. Even when relationships remain strong, the reality of death row creates a form of separation that is not only physical, but psychological. For the families and loved ones of victims, the process is different but equally shaped by time. Appeals can last decades. Hearings may reopen memories and emotions again and again. Some seek closure through the legal process. Others focus on remembrance or private healing. There is no single experience, but almost all face long legal timelines and complex emotions tied to the criminal justice system. The surrounding community also feels the presence of Polunsky. The prison provides employment and economic activity in the Livingston area. At the same time, it symbolizes the presence of the state's most severe punishment. Local identity, politics, and public discussion often reflect this dual role: economic reliance on the institution and awareness of what it represents. Public opinion about the death penalty continues to evolve. Polls over time have shown shifting attitudes in Texas and across the United States. Discussions in universities, faith communities, and civic groups explore questions about fairness, cost, risk of wrongful convictions, and the psychological impact of death row confinement. The Polunsky Unit frequently appears in these conversations because it is one of the most restrictive death row environments in the country. International organizations and human rights groups have also examined conditions at Polunsky, particularly the long-term use of solitary confinement. Reports and legal filings have raised questions about mental health treatment, access to programs, and the duration of isolation. State officials emphasize that the policies are grounded in safety needs and the gravity of capital sentences. This ongoing discussion shows the tension between security priorities and human rights concerns. Meanwhile, inside the unit, life continues in predictable rhythm. Cells are locked and unlocked. Legal mail arrives. Appeals move forward through courts that are often hundreds of miles away. Outside, families wait, communities debate policy, and lawmakers consider changes. The existence of a place like the Allan B. Polunsky Unit brings society face to face with difficult issues: punishment, safety, justice, and the limits of isolation as a tool of control. These questions do not have simple answers, and they continue to shape how death row is managed in Texas today. As these broader debates unfold, another level of understanding becomes important: how systems and psychology interact to create the daily reality for everyone connected to Texas death row. On Texas death row, time is not only measured by clocks or calendars. It is shaped by legal deadlines, court dates, and long periods of waiting. At the Allan B. Polunsky Unit, many people spend 10, 15, or even more years under the same strict routine while their appeals move through the courts. Researchers often describe this as indeterminate time. Days look the same, but the future remains uncertain. This combination can influence thinking and behavior in powerful ways. Some people focus intensely on legal work because it gives direction to time. Others mark days through personal rituals, exercise routines, reading goals, or writing schedules. These strategies are ways of creating structure inside a system where external structure is rigid, but the future is unclear. The absence of normal social roles also affects the sense of time. Without jobs, group activities, or education programs typical in other parts of prison systems, there are fewer milestones to measure progress. There is no promotion at work, no class graduation, no shared achievements. Instead, the major events are legal decisions, visits, and mail. This can make years feel both very long and strangely repetitive. Staff members experience time differently. Their days are driven by shift schedules, policy changes, and career movement. Yet they too work in an environment where routine rarely varies. The same doors, the same checks, the same procedures repeat day after day. Over years, this can create its own form of fatigue. Institutions are shaped not only by rules, but by how those rules feel to live under, whether as an employee or as a prisoner. Time also shapes identity. People enter Polunsky at one age and often grow significantly older before their cases are resolved. Health changes, relationships change, and society outside the prison changes as well. Yet inside the unit, many aspects remain constant. This gap between personal aging and environmental sameness can create a sense of disconnection from the outside world. The legal system is designed to move slowly on purpose, to allow for review, appeals, and careful examination of evidence and procedure. But that same slowness means that life on death row is lived in extended waiting. The psychology of waiting, especially in isolation, has become an important area of study for courts, clinicians, and policymakers. As time stretches on, a key question emerges again and again. What does it mean for a justice system when its most severe sentence is carried out only after many years of isolated waiting? And what are the long-term human effects of that waiting? Every aspect of life inside the Allan B. Polunsky Unit is shaped by rules. These rules govern movement, property, communication, and behavior, and they are enforced through a formal disciplinary system. On Texas death row, small privileges can depend on consistent compliance with policies, while violations can lead to further restrictions. Cells, clothing, and personal items are regulated. Searches are routine. Mail is inspected under policy. Recreation, showers, and visits follow strict schedules and can be interrupted or postponed for security reasons. These measures are not unique to Polunsky. They are common in high-security facilities around the United States. However, on death row, where people already live in single cells with limited activity, disciplinary restrictions can significantly change the little freedom that remains. The purpose of these systems, from the administration's perspective, is order and safety. High-security housing requires predictability. Written rules, documented violations, and clear sanctions give staff a framework for responding to behavior. In a setting where incidents can have serious consequences, predictability is valued over flexibility. For prisoners, discipline systems interact with the psychological effects of isolation. A misconduct charge may lead to loss of privileges, property limits, or further confinement measures, intensifying separation. Conversely, following rules may maintain access to radios, books, or limited recreation time, important coping tools in a highly restricted environment. Appeal processes exist within the disciplinary system, but they also follow formal procedures and paperwork. This adds another layer of bureaucracy to daily life. Interactions with rules become part of the rhythm of living in Polunsky, shaping how people think about choices and consequences inside the prison walls. From a systemic perspective, this constant structure reflects the overall philosophy of the unit. Control first, with other goals, such as programming or rehabilitation, secondary or absent because of the nature of the sentence. Supporters argue that this approach prevents violence and protects staff. Critics argue that extreme control over long periods can harm mental health and make humane management harder, not easier. Both views influence ongoing policy discussions in Texas and beyond. The reality inside Polunsky shows that prisons are not only physical buildings. They are systems of rules, documents, and daily procedures. Those systems have real psychological effects on the people living and working within them. As questions continue about the balance between security and well-being, one unresolved issue remains central. How much control is necessary for safety, and at what point does control itself become part of the problem being studied? The Allan B. Polunsky Unit is not only a building in Livingston, Texas. It is a reflection of law, policy, fear, security, and public values at a specific moment in history. Every locked door, every schedule, every rule has been shaped by decisions made far beyond the prison itself. Life here shows how systems and people interact. Policies written to maximize control create long-term isolation. Isolation creates psychological effects that must then be managed by the same system. Courts extend time to allow for careful review, and that extended time defines daily existence for those who wait. Staff are asked to enforce strict rules year after year, and their lives are shaped by the weight of that duty. Texas death row at Polunsky raises important questions without easy answers. How should a society punish its most serious crimes? What level of isolation is necessary for safety, and what level becomes harmful? How do long appeals processes balance accuracy, fairness, and human cost? And what responsibilities exist toward everyone connected to this system? Victims' families, prisoners' families, staff, and communities. These questions continue in legislatures, universities, courts, and homes. They are part of a global conversation about justice and human rights. Whatever one's views on the death penalty, the reality remains that people live and work every day inside the Allan B. Polunsky Unit under rules designed to administer the state's most severe punishment. The daily life inside Texas death row is not a dramatic movie or a sensational story. It is structured routine, isolation, paperwork, and time, long periods of time, experienced by human beings on both sides of the door. And it leads to a final question that each viewer must consider. What does the existence of a place like Polunsky say about the society that built it, maintains it, and continues to debate its future? Psychological and system analysis. The Polunsky Unit illustrates how environment, psychology, and policy are tightly linked. From a psychological perspective, long-term isolation can increase stress, reduce stimulation, and limit healthy social interaction. People adapt in different ways, by creating routines, focusing on legal work, reading, exercising, or withdrawing inward. Access to mental health care exists, but it operates within strict custody limits, which can make continuous therapeutic relationships difficult. From a systems perspective, death row policies in Texas emphasize maximum security and control. Single-cell housing, non-contact visitation, and controlled movement are designed to prevent incidents and maintain order. These choices are based on risk management, the seriousness of the crimes involved, and the legal status of those housed there. The consequences are layered. Individuals experience isolation and uncertainty over many years. Families of prisoners and victims live with ongoing legal processes. Staff manage stress and responsibility in a high-security workplace. Communities rely on the institution economically while also carrying its social meaning. This interaction between psychology and system design is central. Rules created to improve security shape human behavior, and human behavior then shapes how rules are revised or defended. The Polunsky Unit is therefore both a physical place and a living example of how criminal justice systems function in practice. The daily reality inside Texas death row at the Allan B. Polunsky Unit is built on verified facts, not myth. It is a world of structure, separation, and waiting. It shows how justice systems do not exist in theory alone. They are lived by real people every day. This documentary has explored what life looks like inside Polunsky, how the system developed, how time and isolation affect the human mind, and how families, staff, and communities are connected to this one facility. The goal is not to glorify crime or punishment, but to understand how one of the most restrictive death row environments in the United States operates and what it means. The lessons are clear. Policies have human consequences. Systems shape psychology. And debates about punishment are also debates about values. Public awareness and informed discussion are essential to any democratic society deciding how justice should be carried out. If you found this documentary informative and would like to see more evidence-based explorations of real-world systems and history, consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing your thoughts respectfully in the comments.